Senhoras e senhores, bem-vindos à segunda edição do ciclo Arte e Mercado, hoje com o tema Foto, Perspectivas. Em nome da SP-Arte Foto e da Arte Brasileiros, gostaria de agradecer a presença de todos aqui hoje conosco. Agradeço em especial o apoio do IMS, Instituto Moreira Salles, neste evento. Antes de começarmos, gostaria de fazer alguns anúncios importantes. Primeiro, entre os dias 2 e 4 de setembro, acontece a primeira edição do Art Weekend São Paulo. Mais de 30 galerias vão estender seu horário de funcionamento, oferecendo uma programação especial. O Art Weekend é organizado pelo Latitude em parceria com a SP-Arte. Mais informações no site sp-arte.com. E no dia 8 de setembro, teremos a 4ª edição do Seminário Internacional Arte Brasileiros, com o tema Arte Contemporânea e Realidade. Entre os palestrantes já confirmados, teremos Caroline Christophe Bakagiev, diretora artística da Documenta 13, e o diretor artístico da Bienal de São Paulo deste ano, Joerg Bader. O evento acontece no Auditório Ibirapuera a partir das 10h30 da manhã. Os ingressos são gratuitos e serão distribuídos na bilheteria do auditório 1h30 antes da apresentação. Mais informações sobre a programação do evento, por favor, acessem brasileiros.com.br. Agora, solicito que, por gentileza, desliguem os seus celulares ou os coloquem em modo avião para não termos interferência na sonorização. E informo que as perguntas aos participantes serão feitas pelos microfones que estarão com as nossas recepcionistas. Então, por favor, se identifiquem e façam sua pergunta aos nossos palestrantes após as apresentações. Para darmos início agora ao nosso evento, convido o senhor Hélio Mello, fotojornalista e diretor responsável da Brasileiros Editora. Por gentileza.
Obrigado. Eu gosto muito do fotojornalista. Diretor, eu não me importo muito, de qualquer maneira. Muito obrigado por ter todos vocês aqui. Como ontem, esse encontro promete ser muito bacana, muito rico e muito instigante. Eu vou chamar o Christopher Phillips, que é curador do icônico ICP, para que ele faça a palestra dele.
Good afternoon, and I am delighted to see such a wonderful crowd for the talks today. This is my first visit to Brazil, and I want to especially thank Fernanda Feitosa and her great team at the fair for the invitation to come here and for the extraordinary kindness that they have shown me, and for the many, many wonderful people that they have helped me meet. So I'm very pleased to be here in Sao Paulo today. I want to talk about the institution where I work today. This is the International Center of Photography. It was founded in 1974 in New York, and I want to give you just a very short history of ICP's founding and its background so that you can more easily understand what I'm going to concentrate on today, which is ICP's presentation of contemporary photography during the past 15 years. What you're seeing on the screen now is the original home of ICP, a beautiful townhouse on 5th Avenue at East 94th Street. This building was discovered by Cornell Kappa. Let me see if I can make this work. Okay, there we are. In 1974, as many of you know, Cornel Capa was the younger brother of the celebrated photojournalist Robert Capa. Cornel Capa was also born in Budapest, became a photographer at a very young age, and had a very successful career with Life magazine in the 1950s and 1960s. In the early 1970s, Cornel Capa decided to retire as an active photographer and to start a new institution in New York devoted entirely to photography. He judged very correctly that there was a large audience eager to see exhibitions by the leading photojournalists and documentary photographers. This is the opening evening of ICP's first show in 1974, and you can see the people lined up around the block waiting to get in. Okay. This is Cornel Capa in his office on the 4th floor of ICP. You can see from the portrait that he's a very energetic, a very charismatic man. Over his left shoulder, you can see a famous portrait of his older brother, Robert Capa, which stayed there in the office until Cornel Capa retired in 1995. He worked as director of ICP for 20 years, established the institution, and set it on the direction that in many ways continues until the present. Okay. Here are the galleries at the original ICP. It was an old townhouse. It was not designed to be a museum. There was no climate control except for some old air conditioners, and that limited the kinds of photographs that ICP could present. No major museum like the Metropolitan would lend works to exhibitions in this space because of the lack of control for humidity and temperature. Nevertheless, the exhibitions were well attended, and photographers from around the world were, I think, very pleased to present their work at ICP. From the very beginning, Cornel Capa wanted ICP to be more than just an exhibition gallery. He wanted it to be a meeting place where photographers, young and old, from different parts of the world could meet together, discuss photography, a place where celebrated photographers like Richard Avedon, whom you see here, could examine the portfolios of younger photographers and give them feedback and criticism that would help them on their path. Okay, good. In the year 2000, this is 5 years after the retirement of Cornel Capa, ICP moved from that beautiful townhouse on Fifth Avenue to a larger location in Midtown Manhattan, on 43rd Street at Avenue of the Americas. That old townhouse was very beautiful, but it was physically crumbling. It really required lots of emergency attention so that that building did not physically collapse. It was too much expense for ICP at that point, so that townhouse was sold and ICP moved to a new location where it remained until this year. There were much larger exhibition galleries, a very modern design, very professional lighting, museum quality, climatization, which made it possible for ICP curators to begin to show classic, vintage, historical works from the top museum collections around the world. It was at this point in the year 2000 that I arrived at ICP as a curator. I had been associated in different ways with ICP since I moved to New York in the mid-1980s, but never worked there full-time until the year 2000, When I arrived, my mission was to find a way to bring ICP into the era of contemporary photography. And I'll mention too that in the early years at ICP, Cornell Kappa really never wanted ICP to have a large collection of photographs. He thought it would be too much trouble, and he really wanted ICP to be a very lively and fast-changing place for meeting and discussion. Nevertheless, Cornell Kappa's friends from Magnum, all of his photographer friends from around the world immediately started making gifts to ICP of their photographs. So a collection started to grow and got larger and larger and larger. When I arrived at ICP in 2000, there were probably about 50,000 photographs in the ICP collection. At that time, nothing was cataloged. There were not even a card file. So one of the big projects that I spent years working on was starting to catalog the ICP collection and to create a database. And that still is continuing. In the year 2003, ICP's board members strongly encouraged the curators to start a regular triennial exhibition every 3 years of contemporary photography and video from around the world. This had been discussed by ICP curators in earlier years, but there was never the money, never the funding to make a serious move toward launching an ICP triennial. I'll mention also, because this is an important fact about ICP that helps you understand what I'll show you from this point on. ICP from the beginning has been a completely private institution. ICP receives no regular funding from the national government or the state government or the city government in New York City. Every year, ICP's director and board members must do fundraising to cover all of the operating costs and all of the cost of the exhibitions. And this is really the major job of ICP's director, who is going around with his hat begging for money every day. At this point, in 2016, the annual operating budget of ICP is close to $20 million a year. So this is a very serious matter. ICP has survived all of these years because from the very beginning, ICP has had a very successful school. The ICP school is a place where the leading New York photographers regularly teach. It's a place where students from 30 or 40 countries come to study every year. It's a remarkable place. And it has also been enormously successful financially. Without the success of the ICP school, ICP would have collapsed many years ago. So in the year 2003, the ICP curators were instructed and encouraged by our board members to begin to prepare a regular ICP contemporary photography triennial. We started in 2003 with an exhibition that was called Strangers. We started working on the exhibition, preparing it, in the years after the 9/11 destruction of the World Trade Towers in New York. It was a time when there was a lot of anxiety in New York, a lot of suspicion about who are these people we see on the streets every day. It's the kind of mood that I think again has returned in the US and to many European cities, unfortunately, as well. Because we had very generous financial support for that first triennial, we were able to commission works by many very talented photographers. We invited the Swiss photographer Beat Streuly to make photographs on the streets of New York of passers-by, and we presented those as large-scale illuminated windows all the way around the exterior of ICP. We also decided for that first triennial to include video works and some multimedia works, even though this was very new for the ICP curators. What we see here at the entranceway is a kind of video sculptural work by the Polish-American artist Krzysztof Wojcicki. It's a little too complicated to explain, but it was meant to send a signal to the visitors coming into the show that ICP in the future would be a place not only for framed photographs on the wall, but for media works involving photography as well. I'm not going to identify all the works in each of the exhibitions as we go through these slides, but I will tell you that it was a very interesting process for the curators to work together for 12 months to try to make a selection from many portfolios that we examined. What we decided in terms of the process is that we would only work with the staff curators at ICP. We did not invite outside curators to join the selection. We made the rule that all 4 of the curators who worked on this show had to agree before any work could be selected for inclusion. We decided there would be no trading among the curators saying, if you include the work by my favorite photographer, I will include the work by your favorite photographer. We did not do that. We felt it would not produce a strong exhibition. So we had long discussions. We had many arguments. We went back to the photographs and talked about them over and over again until all 4 curators had the confidence to say, yes, that work should definitely be in the exhibition. It was a very difficult and stressful process. There were meetings with lots of screaming and yelling and people slamming the door and walking out. But the next day, we were all sitting around the table again together. It was something like a family project. Okay. For this first triennial, I remember that we decided to show the video works in special small screening rooms. There were really no video works on the wall because we felt it would be distracting and would create too many reflections on the frame photographs. So the video works were really shown together as screening series inside 2 different specially built screening rooms. One was behind this big red wall that you see here. 3 years later, the second ICP triennial took place, again with the same 4 ICP staff curators, and again I acted as the coordinator for the show. We chose as the theme of the exhibition the idea of ecology and utopia. This was a moment when there were growing concerns about the environment. Many artists around the world were starting to make artworks with ecological themes. So we invented a new word, ecotopia, which is a combination of the word ecology and the word utopia. And for the cover of the catalog and for the poster, we chose an image by a young American photographer who invented a kind of science fiction story about a post-disaster world where young people in high-tech outfits roamed around the planet trying to start civilization again. For the outside window, we chose a very striking photograph by the New York photographer Mitch Epstein, which shows a very typical-looking American suburban backyard, but in the distance behind it, you see sort of the ominous shape of a big nuclear power plant. Now, for each of our ICP triennials, we have chosen an outside installation designer to work with the curators and to try to create a very distinctive look for the exhibitions. Usually that has been a very successful process. Looking back, I think that with this exhibition, the installation design got a little out of hand, and really it took over some of the rooms, as you see here. The designer had the idea of using industrial material and to try to create these shrub-like, plant-like forms that seem to be growing and wrapping themselves around stairways and pillars. And some of those installation shapes also served as video screening places too. That's a group of photographs by Robert Adams, a great American Western photographer in the background. Okay, so just a couple of installation shots here. Another screening room using this horrible industrial material downstairs. I really got a little sick of this material very quickly. Okay. But you can see here from this installation shot that we were starting to show video installations, room installations based on video works, in addition to light boxes, and really trying to find a way to present all the different forms in which younger artists and photographers were showing photography at this moment in 2006. Okay. In 2009, the third ICP triennial took part within a whole year devoted to fashion photography. We presented a big retrospective of the fashion photographs of Richard Avedon. We showed group exhibitions by young fashion photographers from around the world. And the final exhibition of that year was the ICP triennial, which took as its theme the way that clothing and costume and apparel are used around the world today to define identity and to help people establish their public personalities. The outside wall was created by the installation designer, and it's really slivers. It's a collage of vertical sections from many of the different works that were in the exhibition. And some of you may remember yesterday Brett Rogers showed a work by Richard Leroy, a brilliant British portrait photographer. I think this was his first exhibition in the US in this triennial. Okay. Here is the opening wall, and I'm sorry that I can't show you more clearly the works that are just to the left of that title, Dress Codes. It's a group of photographs portraits made in Bahia by a very talented Turkish artist and photographer, Pinar Yolakan, who has been working from time to time in Brazil since 2006 and 2007. Pinar is in the audience today. I see Pinar. And I'm sorry, Pinar, I wish I had details of your works to show, but I didn't know I was going to see you in the audience today. Okay. By this time, you can see that the curators felt very confident about showing video works inside the galleries alongside the big, large framed photographs. And we also, I think we're starting to understand how to organize an exhibition so that ideas and conversations seem to go back and forth between the different works. On the central wall, there's a wonderful, very funny photo collage by the American artist Martha Rossler, which shows a group of young men wearing, I think, Gucci suits, and they are walking through some kind of horrible urban disaster area, and all the buildings are on fire. Probably the most interesting part of that 2009 triennial was the large installation that we commissioned by the Berlin artist Thorsten Brinkmann. He is a kind of artist who scavenges materials wherever he goes and then uses them on the walls alongside his own photographs of people that he poses in bits of clothing that he has picked up in the streets in different cities. Thorsten Brinkmann came to New York, and we were a little nervous about this project because we had not worked with him before. But he rented a truck and spent 3 days driving around in Manhattan and Brooklyn and Queens, and came back with all kinds of wonderful furniture and wallpaper, and in the course of 2 or 3 days created this really very beautiful installation that cost, I think, a total of about $200 US to produce. Okay, and then one more wall from that triennial just to show you some of the ways that we were hanging photographs to make the best use of this very unusual space at ICP. Okay. We should have had the 4th triennial in the year 2012. We skipped that year because the global financial meltdown in 2008 and 2009 really shook the finances of ICP, and so we did not have the money to do the triennial in 2012. We waited until the next year. And this is the 4th and final ICP triennial. The title is A Different Kind of Order, and in it the ICP curators tried to bring some of the new digital work that we were seeing into a kind of dialogue with more traditional aspects of photography. We also had a big section of photo books from around the world because we recognize that today photo books are absolutely one of the most inventive areas of photographic creation. So we use some works by artists, like this enormous photo collage by a Los Angeles artist whose name I'm unfortunately not able to bring up right now. This was an enormous photo collage with probably 20,000 small photographs, very reminiscent of Dada photo montage of the early 20th century. Getting this work, everything was pinned with small straight pins to a canvas. Transporting this work from Los Angeles to New York was a nightmare, but nevertheless we felt it was an important work, and so we managed to get it to New York and get it back safely to the artist in Los Angeles. We showed work in that triennial by a very talented Japanese photographer, Sohei Noshino, who travels to cities around the world, makes thousands of photographs on film with his 35mm camera, and then assembles the frames of the contact sheets into large-scale imaginary maps. He calls these city maps, and they're not realistic at all. They are meant to suggest his experience of walking around cities like New York or Tokyo or Tel Aviv and creating a kind of fantasy image of that city. In that 4th triennial, we showed large-scale lightbox works by the very talented South African photographer Mikkel Subatsky. These are large-scale light boxes, and they're a kind of portrait of a high-rise residential tower in Johannesburg, and portraits of the inhabitants in those images. I don't have a detail, but it's really a precise diagram of who is living on each floor of this very tall building and what the interior of their apartments looks like. Yeah, here's one detail. Inside, looking out from the top of this residential tower. We also included in this triennial some very large video installations, such as this piece by a very talented Tel Aviv artist, a young man named Nir Evran, who created a kind of robotic camera that he used to create an 8-minute-long video that takes you on a tour of this abandoned building that looks down from a hilltop over the city of Jerusalem. And I'm sorry that I don't have the video to show you, but this is a great example of the intersection of still photography and moving images. This work starts with a still image, the one you see here. After about 30 seconds, the camera starts to slowly tilt up to the sky, and then before you know it, you're upside down and touring this abandoned concrete building while the camera mechanically moves from one side of that building to another and then comes back to this same location. Okay, in this fourth triennial, we showed examples of the new abstract photography that was becoming very popular at that moment in 2013. These are works by Los Angeles photographer Sam Falls, who is creating fake color photograms in his studio. He's using an airbrush technique in order to do this. Okay, and some more, and I'm not going to describe these because I do want to say a little bit about our opening show at the new Bowery space. Okay, fine. Okay. Is it? I can't tell if she was holding up the 5 minutes or not. I will keep going then. One of the most significant works we showed in this ICP triennial was a piece by the Lebanese artist Rabbi Mourey having to do with the controversy about the supposed fact of people, journalists with cell phone cameras photographing their own death, photographing themselves being shot by militia people on the streets of different Middle Eastern cities. At one moment, it was possible to find many images like this on the internet, but no one could really ever discover if these were actual images of a photographer being shot at, or whether this was an elaborate fake staged by some artist. And Rabbi Mourey, in this really wonderful work, told the story of this controversy, and he felt that in the end, there was no way to determine the truth or the untruth of these images. And he said that is really the situation we are in today with the relation of photography to events in the world. There is no way of determining what is an accurate, objective, truthful image and what is a fake image. Okay, that's good. Now, I will close by saying just a few words about the opening of ICP's new exhibition space, which is in Lower Manhattan. After 15 years in our beautiful galleries in Midtown New York, which we were renting, the price of real estate became so expensive that it was no longer financially possible for ICP to stay there. In addition, it became very difficult for ICP to attract younger visitors to come from downtown, which is where the universities are located, and the new art galleries, to get them to come to Midtown. So the decision was made to leave Midtown and to move eventually all of ICP to Lower Manhattan. 2 years ago, we purchased a new space on Bowery. If you know Manhattan, if you know the new museum, we are directly across the street from the new museum. This new space opened in early June, and the first exhibition that we presented takes ICP in a very different direction. This is the interior of the space. The plan is that the ground floor area will be completely free and open to the public. You can get very good coffee there and sandwiches. You can look at books. There will be artworks on view and many tables where people can sit and talk about photography or examine portfolios or use the free, fast Wi-Fi that seems very attractive to many people today. So all of this is to get people in the door, and for those who want to continue to see the exhibitions, they pass through those glass doors in the back. It was decided at this time by the curators and ICP's director and board members to not continue with the ICP triennial. We all had the feeling that photography is changing so rapidly today. There are so many incredible photographers working around the world. The technological changes are taking place so rapidly now that 3 years was just too long a period to wait between exhibitions. So we will now try to move to a much faster exhibition cycle and to try to acknowledge the new trends and the rising young artist as quickly as possible. The first exhibition presented at the ICP Bowery space was organized by a well-known British curator. Her name is Charlotte Cotton. She has published 2 very good books about contemporary photography. And she is really very determined to bring digital photography in all its forms into exhibition programs at museums around the world. Charlotte Cotton organized an exhibition titled Public, Private, Secret. And it brings together both traditional photographic prints, framed, as you can see on the mirrored walls here, which were designed just for this show. But in fact, more than half of the works in the exhibition, let's see, as you can see here, are works that are not framed prints, but they are works made by the photographers to appear on screens of different kinds. I know from talking to many of our old-time regular ICP visitors, they found it really shocking to walk into an exhibition and they're looking around to find photographic print. Instead, what they're seeing are rows and rows of screens and monitors exactly as you see here. Let me see if I can go back. Our visitors were also shocked that the first 2 images that they saw when they entered this exhibition, one was a very well-known classic Cindy Sherman self-portrait in which it seems that she's being observed by a hiding paparazzi. It's almost like a surveillance photograph. And then next to this work, and I don't have a slide of this unfortunately, was a selfie by Kim Kardashian. Many of our old ICP visitors were outraged at the idea of Kim Kardashian being presented in any way in the ICP galleries. But Charlotte Cotton, I think very rightly said, selfies, this is what's happening today, and to understand selfies, you need to know about Cindy Sherman, but you also need to know about media celebrities like Kim Kardashian. Okay. There are 1 or 2 innovations in this exhibition that I think will become very important in the years ahead. The curator, Charlotte Cotton, worked with a creative technology specialist and designed a number of special screens like this that present a changing series of images that are selected by a computer software program from images on social media on the internet. Charlotte calls this real-time curating, which means that she and her technology collaborator are designing special software that searches the internet using search terms that they have defined, and the works are selected by the software program according to which images out there right now are getting the most attention. So there are 6 or 7 of these screens in the opening ICP exhibition. I'm not sure how successful it is personally, and the drawback is that all of the software search is done according to verbal terms, hashtags. These are not image searches, because that's not technologically realistic yet for a museum like ICP. In the next 5 years, I'm convinced there will be very sophisticated image search technology that curators and artists will start to employ to explore what's out there on the internet at any moment in the day. So I think this idea of real-time curation or real-time selection will be important as we're going ahead. And I will move ahead just a little more quickly because we're getting toward the end of the time. Okay, I'll show you 2 last works to show you the way that in this exhibition, both the long-standing traditions of documentary photography come together with some new ways of presentation, and also the way that media imagery is now being explored by artists and curators. And this again is an installation photo from ICP's current show at the New Bowery Space, Public, Private, Secret. You can see on the left there are 2 police photos. Let's see if I can go in a little more carefully here. These are examples of the classic police mugshot, straight on face view and then a profile. This kind of photography has been practiced since the 1880s, and you find it around the world today, and it will probably continue forever. We presented on that same wall an example of mugshots from Mexico City that were found by a collector, and he made those available to us. These are images from the 1950s up until the 1970s. And then finally, to add another dimension to this, we presented a group of 4 photographs by a well-known French photographer, Marc Garanger. These are photographs that he made in the 1960s while he was in the French Army, at the time that the French Army was fighting colonial war in Algeria. These are all portraits made by this young French military photographer of Algerian women. His job was to make ID photographs of each of them. These were all village women who had never revealed their face to an outsider, never taken off their veil, but the French military insisted that they show their bare face, and in the eyes of these women you can see looks of anger so intense that you could imagine it could crack the camera lens. Okay. These are very well-known photographs now. Later, Marc Garanger published a book called Algerian Women, which is now a classic. Finally, to end with an example of an artist designing his own software to interact with classic media imagery. On the left, you see a group of 12 stills from the famous Antonioni movie of 1965, I think, Blow Up. And those of you who have seen it know that it's the story of a young fashion photographer who accidentally photographs a murder and finds himself entangled in a series of very complicated events as the young woman who staged this murder tries desperately to get that roll of film with the images of the dead body on it. On the right, you see a plasma screen, and the work that you see there is by a young American artist named John Houck. He, working with a technology specialist, devised special software using facial recognition technology. And he applied this facial recognition software to scenes from the film Blow Up. Okay, there you see Vanessa Redgrave, and the software is sort of creating a little rectangle there. And there's David Hemmings. But the software was designed to be a little stupid. So as it searches through each frame, it's also finding places that look a little like a face. You almost see two eyes and maybe a nose there. But it's a mistake. It's not a face at all. It's just something that the software identifies as being a face. After you watch this for 5 or 10 minutes, people are after they understand what's going on, they are laughing loudly about how stupid the software is. It makes them feel very clever as human beings to be able to tell the difference between a real human face and something that only resembles a human face. So these are just a few of the examples of works from ICP Bowery's first Space, Public, Private, Secret. The show has received a very, very mixed reception. There have been some critics who have written enormously positive and glowing reviews saying this is the wave of the future, this is what all museums will be doing in 10 years. We have also received not so positive reviews from some more traditional critics saying this is a disaster, this is the worst show I've ever seen in my life. I walked out of here feeling angry and cheated. And this kind of very divided reaction, I think, is probably a positive sign. It's in fact what we expected and even hoped would happen. Luckily, we did get that very positive review at the very beginning, so we were ready for the less positive press reactions. I'm going to bring my presentation to an end at this point. I would love to answer any questions that you may have before we continue with our other speaker today.
Vamos abrir agora para as perguntas. Aqueles que desejarem fazerem alguma questão para o nosso palestrante, por favor, fiquem à vontade, identifiquem-se que a nossa equipe leva o microfone até vocês, ok?
Como é que você se sente nessa radical transição do ICP? Nem trienal mais tempo.
It is a very radical transition, but it's absolutely necessary that ICP goes through this transition and stays with the younger generation of photographers and image makers and the new directions in which they are taking photography. At this point, the discussion about digital photography has been taking place for 25 years. So this is not something that has just appeared before our eyes. There have been many discussions and debates and previous exhibitions. I think it's because imaging technology has changed so dramatically in the last 8 to 10 years that we feel like we're in a new world. And in many ways we are. But I think there has been enough of a discussion about what it means to make this transition from analog photography, from film, to the new digital technologies. So I think you can't ignore that change. All you can try to do is have an intelligent way of approaching it and presenting it.
Para alguém que teve a oportunidade de participar acompanhando durante tantos anos a captação da imagem, qual você acha que tem sido, do ponto de vista da estética, algumas das transições ou questões que aparecem como diferentes ao longo dos últimos 10, 15 anos.
Não vale falar naquelas espumas que estão invadindo o ICP, tá? Aquelas black foams over there.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. Let me.
Yeah, yes, independent of the technology, of course. Okay.
Okay, I understand
Yes,
enough to give you an answer.
Yes.
I was very interested yesterday to listen to Jeff Rosenheim from the Metropolitan Museum, whose love of photography goes all the way back to the daguerreotype and those very early ways of making photographic images, and comes almost up to the present. I'm of that same generation. I still love the 19th century photography, all of those wonderful processes, and they're so magical. But I'm also very interested in what the younger people are doing today, and I think you can't dismiss that work if you are a museum curator. I make it a point to teach every year a seminar for the young students in the art department at New York University, because I learn so much from them, and I learn to understand a little how they are looking at photography and images of all kinds. What I have seen in the last 5 years, my students tell me that, and these are students who consider themselves photographers, they say they make a sharp distinction between what they call photography, which is everything that's traditional and ends as a print on the wall, between that kind of approach to making still images, and on the other hand, what they call imaging. And that's the digital techniques, the images made using your iPhone, images that are circulated around the world on the internet, images that are never meant to appear as frame prints on the wall. My students also understand the idea of imaging to include moving images, animation. They're doing all of that today. Even though they consider themselves, they say, I'm studying photography. When I taught my seminar 3 months ago, I was surprised that now my young 20-year-old students are making virtual reality works, that you have to put on the goggles and you hear the headsets. They are writing their own computer code to animate images. They are in a world that it's very hard for me to follow. But this is the world that they live in every day. And they see strong connections between this new world of digital imaging and the traditional world of photography. They think one flows right into the other. So I keep trying to learn from my students, and I think for many of us that's the most successful path.
Continuando esse tema que a gente está falando sobre esse novo tempo de captação e de representação da fotografia, uma vez quando a gente estava agora nesse novo espaço junto, você me falou que parece que dos 16 alunos na NIU, só 2 apresentaram prints, o resto era tudo.
Alô?
Que só 16 alunos apresentaram, dos 16, só 2 apresentaram prints. Justamente essa question do imaging e image, né? E eu queria também perguntar, assim, porque eu entendo que o ICP, diferente de outros museus, ele é um museu ligado a uma escola de fotografia que quer muito estar no compasso dessa nova era. Então, falar um pouco mais sobre isso, porque, diferente dos outros museus, a proposta do ICP como escola e como museu é estar no compasso desse novo tempo e também, enfim, continuar sobre essa questão.
As I've mentioned before, the school at ICP is very important for the financial survival of the entire institution, and so everyone, including the curators, is very much involved with the classes that are taught at the school. And the students who come from 30 countries or 40 countries are a great source of information to all of us. I would say that probably 10 years ago, the teachers in the schools started reporting that there was every year less and less demand for darkroom classes, less and less demand for classes learning how to use the large classic view cameras, and every year more and more students wanted to learn advanced digital photography techniques. This is happening at every school of art, not only in the US, but everywhere around the world. At ICP, at first there was some resistance to moving the program of the school to really embrace the new digital imaging technologies. But I would say at this point, today in 2016, ICP school is really defined by its enthusiastic embrace of digital imaging in all of its forms. We have a new program designed by the dean of ICP school, Fred Richen, who started his career as a photo editor at the New York Times Magazine. Today he is teaching classes on digital narrative, new media narrative. He's teaching young students how to make sequences of images that can appear on screens or appear on internet websites that mix still images, moving images, sounds of different kinds. This multimedia direction is very powerful, and ICP feels that in order to stay on the same page, to move in the same direction as the most interesting younger artists and photojournalists, we have to completely understand all of these processes.
Muito obrigado. Vamos ter que encerrar. Podemos mais uma pergunta? Então, por favor, o microfone ali para ela.
Christopher, continuando um pouco na linha que você está falando, a mudança na fotografia, na forma de aprender fotografia, também está trazendo uma mudança na curadoria. Como é que é a formação dos novos curadores que trabalham com esse tipo de fotografia nova? Evidentemente que tem uma diferença muito grande em relação aos curadores da fotografia tradicional. Como é que você vê isso?
I can say just a little bit to answer that question. I can't give a detailed answer. It's something that, it's a question that I'm very aware of. There is a whole generation of young curators, people in their 20s and early 30s, who have grown up entirely in the digital world. They really seem to have almost no interest in sort of traditional photographic artifacts or presenting images framed on a wall. These young curators speak their own language. They have their own magazines and websites where they circulate ideas. In many ways, they speak a language that I can't understand. My project for the coming years is to try to learn this new language of curating among the young people and incorporate that into the exhibitions that I will be making. I feel like I'm going back to school, and in life, very often that's a very good thing to do. Every 10 years or 20 years, you realize the world has changed. There are new ideas and new ways of working, and if you don't learn how to take part in that new world, you will, be superseded. You'll be antiquated.
Ok? Muito obrigada. Muito obrigada, Christopher. Thank you so much. Vamos dar continuidade ao nosso debate. O Christopher, acredito que vai permanecer aqui conosco. Ele vai estar aqui no evento até o fim. Caso alguém tenha mais alguma pergunta para ele, eu acredito que ele não vai se importar de responder. O nosso próximo palestrante, agora eu gostaria de convidar o senhor Joerg Bader, que ele é diretor do Centro de Fotografia de Geneva. Is that correct? Did I say that right? So please, join us. E também gostaria de chamar o fotojornalista e diretor responsável da Brasileiros, editora, Hélio Mello, por gentileza.
When you
boa tarde. Sou muito feliz aqui, todo mundo diz, é de verdade. As duas equipes da SP-Arte Foto e também a Arte Brasileira são excelentes. Quero agradecer a todas as equipes e quero agradecer especialmente a Fernanda, Lucia e Fabiana. Então, meu português é muito mal, então, desculpa, eu vou falar em inglês, senão as coisas não serão bastante precisas. I will maybe give a tiny little introduction about the Center of Photography first. It's funny, on a time agenda, it's a bit similar than the ICP, but much more modest, of course. Center of Photography started in 10 years later than ICP in '84. It was the same time that in Lausanne, in Switzerland, 40 kilometers from Geneva, the first museum for photography opened. I think it's something very important to keep in mind, this very intelligent observation of Douglas Crimp when he said that photography may be discovered officially in 1839, but it was discovered as a medium that you collect, that you reflect, that you make it a philosophical object only in the 70s, no? And so this is sure why ICP in 74, this museum in Lausanne 84, Centre de la Photographie 84, it was founded by photographers, what is often the case, and it was tied to history. It was also very tied to the photographic Geneva scene, and I arrived in 2001, and so I directed, it was an urge to open it to the contemporary art, but it was also the moment where all kind of photographic production get more and more discussed. And so I started with a program line that we could call documentary style. This was very important. And then also the influence, of course, of cultural and especially visual studies, who start to take serious image production, photographic production that wasn't taken serious by this generation before me, who tried to defend photography as a fine art. And so we started also in 2003 with a triennial. Now, after what Christopher said, that they can accelerate, I think, oh my God, do we have to accelerate also? But for the time we have the next previewed on 2019. And it was for us especially a way to get more connected in the city. We have in general 35 institutions, libraries, office spaces who are showing either photography or photography in the thematic that we define. And I started in 2003 with a show that is always the nucleus. And we have for that also much more space than in general. We are based in the same building than the Kunsthalle of Geneva and the Museum of Contemporary Art. And so the first one was representation of work and work of representation. The second was called, I think this is quite a clear concept by itself. The second was phototraffic. It was about photographs that have been picked up by artists, taken out of a circulation, trafficked, and put in another circulation. So, just as an example, Elke Christofek made a book that was called The Rich Meets the Poor, and it was a lot of advertising from fashion magazines that she treated very badly. So she took it off of these magazines and she made a book, and the book get in another circulation. And this is also something that I'm very, since the beginning in 2001, I'm especially with these thematic exhibitions that I'm aware of, is to show photography in all its possible presentation. I'm absolutely not a vintage print fetishist, and so I like to have posters in the city and to be on electronic screens and to have in the show projections that can be diapositives or that can digital projections, to have books. This is something about this book importance in the last year that Christopher mentioned. It's something that is not so in the mind of the people. I mean, the history of photography was mainly written by books and not as in the arts by exhibitions. So the book is still something very important. And in 2010, I was showing the revenge of the photographic archive. This was all about people who worked with archives or who have done archives with photos of other people or with photos of themselves, or who through publication nourished existing archives. And this was all very politically or socially engaged. And then in 3 years ago, as I was very with this program of the documentary style, we made a show called False Fakes. And it was something that, it came from an observation. Today you have the best photo reporters or war reporters. You have two excellent war photographers in Geneva and Lausanne. Matthias Bruckmann is one of them, and they really have Jeff Wall as a model. So they are so proud when they come back from the front, or not only on the front, they maybe photograph less than on the front. And with a picture, with a photograph, that you don't know anymore if it's a fiction or if it's a document. And I think this was very, very important in history of photography, this moment of end 70s when Cindy Sherman and Jeff Wall started to do mise en scène to make believers that these photos that we see are instant, and so for me this is also a big jubilee, because this is really the end of the Cartier-Bressonian parameter, And so we come to the show that we have done this summer in this triennial, and it's called Camera Auto Control. So camera, in parentheses, auto and control. And I will say the concept in 2-3 words. For a lot of people, photography is the style of Cartier-Bresson, is street photography. A long, long time, photography, the art of photography was identified with street photography. So, exactly these people, in the last 25, 30 years, we could even do a jubilee, start to be more and more aggressive against people who photographed in public spaces. And they even get aggressive physically, something that if it would have been from the beginning of the Leica system, you would not have done your work, I suppose. But at the same time, these people accept to be filmed also since 25 or 30 years, to be filmed in every public spaces, at every supermarket, 24-hour and 24-hour. And I was thinking, well, this is a kind of schizophrenia, no? How comes? And then you have this sticker very often at these control cameras, or under the controls, with a stupid smile, no? Smiley. Smile, you're filmed. I've never seen somebody smiling, never. I mean, we had hackers, gorgeous. We had artists who displaced, shifted the system. But we never had a civil movement. I say that all the time. Then I was corrected that in a city in England, they really had a movement. But I mean, more in a bigger way, there was no movement of the civil society against this permanent filming. And it goes on, it becomes worse. So I was thinking, but what is that with this smiling, you know? And then, of course, today people smile permanently in their own smartphone. And so I was thinking, okay, there is something of unexpressed or oppressed, you know, an unconsciousness. And so the idea of the show was to bring together works that are related to surveillance cameras. So all the field, how we are today filmed and observed, but also how we participate to it. And this has to do with, for example, what the Sigmund Baumann, the sociologue, or Korean-German philosophers, Byung-Chul Han, are observing that the newest state of capitalism, where you do the most money today, is with information. It's Google, it's Facebook. So everybody, we participate happily to our own exploitation. So this is really new state, because before you had the Foucauldian psychopolitic, where the body was really in danger and suffered and sweat and sometimes even revolt. But today you don't have revolt. Every participate, look, Pokemon. And it's amazing, it's awful, and nobody reads what is in this contract. In this contract is written that all these images belongs to the state of America, of the United States. And the developer is somebody who had money from the CIA. And everybody's happy, you know? This is we are really living in science fiction. So this was the idea of developing the show. And selfie. I mean, selfie is such it has to be observed. I agree with Christopher. It's of course the way of image making of today, and tomorrow it will be worse, and we have to be attentive, and we have also to think critically about. And I like very much this photograph of Hélio Mello, because there exists, for example, one of Martin Parr, but it's not as good as that, because here you have, first, aesthetically it's much better done, and then you have, this is something very strange, you can observe that in the Prado, you can observe that in the Louvre. People permanently are photographing the pictures. So you ask themselves, are they looking through the lenses? They don't really see, you know, they need a screen for to look at. This is one thing. And the other thing is that they photograph them by themselves. They do their selfies in front of the... So it's a very weird situation. You have all these big museums with the most sophisticated way of image making, the old way, the canvas paintings, no? And I would like to start to speak about a bit of the show with a little extract of one of the pieces that was in the exhibition Camera Auto Control, and it's done by Geneva artist collective. It's called Collective Fact, and we have a look at it. I knew that had to be with the famous first. I went to look.
No picture.
It's a title. How are we gonna have pictures? So maybe, yeah, I can go on. So they are living now in London, and they have done already quite different works, always in the National Gallery. And it's photo, huh? It's, well, what is photo today? I mean, with these machines you film and you do photo, so even the machines made it floating, this old differences of moving image or fixed image. And so they photographed in the National Gallery paintings and the publics of the paintings, and then they give it to a software that recognized faces and gestures, and it was the software that made the montage. And I think this is very important to know, and it comes close to what Christopher presented us just before.
Okay.
So this is a collective fact, huh?
Can I ask for your presentation? Can I ask for the
Yeah.
PDF? Dudu, pode colocar a apresentação dele, por favor?
Okay, so I will speak a bit about the show and explain some works and artist positions. This is a piece from James Brittle. What I also like very often is to mix the status of the authors of the images. When it's possible to have politic activists, it's great. When it's possible to have photographs from amateurs, I'm interested. I have absolutely not these classifications that when you are in a big museum that you have to work much more serious and have clear classifications. So James Brittle, he's as well an activist than an artist, and this is a big place in Geneva called Plein Palais. Our Center of Photography is very close, and on the crossing of the street you have the shadow painted of a drone. And I just remember that in the history of photography, when we teach, and thanks to Christopher, I have again the name of this myth, this Greek myth, because we always teach that the first photograph was Dibutages, who had her lover gone, and she knew that he will go to the sea, and in the night before he left, she was drawing the profile of his head on the wall when the shadow was projected to the wall. And so if you if you understand photography, for example, as Rosalind Cross in a very interesting way developed, if you understand photography as an index, as a trace of light rays, so you also can consider shadows already in the category of photography. So of course, drones are today very important, not only for image making. We know that it's also very important in the future wars, in the wars of today. For example, Obama, he has every Tuesday, I think, a session in the White House, and he got a list of people who are observed by the drones, and whereas through algorithms, names are coming out, and he is crossing, and then the next will be. So this means also, this is something that we never can imagine. What is that when you live with daily wise, every day you have the sound of drones over you, and the whole population in the world living like that. So of course this made also part of our show, of our reflections. This is a piece outside of the center of Nicolas Crispini. It was a picture that made in Europe a huge impact when they scanned a whole truck, and instead of finding crates in it, they had all these silhouettes, and it looks like the ships of slaves that came to Brazil. It's the same way, no? This is Paulo Siri, another activist also. He, through the social networks, he discovered the heads of people who are very hidden, because they do everything to control us. There are people who are directing FBI, CIA, NSA, and he found their heads, and he is showing them in the public space and also in the museum space. So this was the entry of the show, and it's a piece of Luc Andrier, this little monitor. It could be a control monitor, and it's a man that is sitting on a chair, and you have no idea what he's doing there, and sometimes the objective really cross his eyes, and you are really not at ease knowing if he knows that he's observed or not. And it's a guard in the Mozambique Brasileiro Culture Institute in Maputo, and he wasn't aware that he was filmed by the artist. Guillaume Desanges and Michel François, they made a gorgeous biennial that was unfortunately not so big received. Michel François is a quite famous Belgian artist, and Guillaume Desanges, a young French curator, and François invited Desanges when François was invited to do a biennial in Leuven. This is an important university city in Belgium, and as there are Belgians, in Brussels you have this big atomium, this big sculpture that is the image that you can visit and go in of an atom. And it's from Universal Exhibition end of the 50s, I don't remember exactly which year. There are these gorgeous photos of Marcel Broodhaus, who was working on this site. And so this Universal Exhibition Brussels is always in the head of the Belgium as something of the proudness. And Michel François and Guillaume Desanges decided to do also a Universal exhibition, but in an abandoned parking under earth, and they will show all the best of the future and all the best of the present, but they will show, and they showed, everything that is hidden today. Black market, how to do bombs, and also the whole, and they did dedicated to each of these thematic pavilion, and they made a surveillance pavilion. And so you have this Zen garden, and when you come in, it looks so cool and relaxing, and it's quite in this relaxed culture of today. And then when you observe the screens, you see that yourself, you are on the screens because there are little cameras in the stones. And when they have been reaching about surveillance cameras, and this gives them the idea, they discovered that there exists fake stones with camera in. So to have your house protected by one of these stones, and you will be sure to have no thieves in your house. Joachim Kojancic is a black and white photographer, very in the school of the Swedish Engström and these people, and he made this photo with this eye in this TV screen. Of course, it goes, it reminds George Orwell's novel 1984. I mean, maybe later we can discuss if we are already in it or if we are buoyant or absolutely not. I have, with artists of the show, heavy discussions about that. And what you have here in the foreground is there are two pieces. This is this étalage, I don't know how to say in English, and this urubu. And both works are from Jimmy Durham, and on this étalage there are a lot of fake surveillance cameras, so it was to impress the public, but they haven't been filmed, but they have been looked by this urubu, or observed during their visit. Lynn Hirschman Leeson is probably not enough well-known artist, very in the 70s, 80s, very in touch with questions of feminism, later on bioscience, and the series on the left side is phantom limb, where she put on female bodies camera objectives or screens, and on the right side, this is a recent work. It's unfortunately, we don't see it very well. It's her self-portrait in a cell phone that has cracked, that the glass cracked. Then Edmund Clark, who had the possibility to get in a house in England. England has something like the Patriotic Acts that the Americans had just voted on the Bush just after the attack of 9/11. England had a similar law in 2007 where you can be put in a house, not in jail, because to get in jail you need a trial, you have your lawyer, etc. But if there is suspicion on you, they put you in this house, and you are completely cut off all the contacts, and they need no proofs. It's just on somebody will denounce you, and they think, yeah, this person is related to terrorists, and then you have to live in this house. And he photographed the whole house in 2 days. This is what I also like is in these shows to not have only photographs. I mean, it's in a similar spirit as Christopher spoke about the ICA. I think today image making cannot be any more separated one from each, especially when we speak about lens images, but also painting. And for example, this work, I'm not on Facebook, is from Gianni Motti, an activist who never painted in his life, but he was invited for a show at Metro Picture in New York, so he really attempted the summit of his career, and then he gets so wild because people open for him an account on Facebook, and he gets so mad that he made his more or less only painting and paint on a canvas. I'm not on Facebook, and then the people of Metro Picture, who are very tied to all these questions of new media, and so they get so mad about that they put it in a corner and try to hide it as much as possible. The public was, the visitors haven't been really observed during the exhibition. The person who was most under control was myself. I was very much fighting that we got this historic piece of Dan Graham yesterday, today. It's a camera that films the desk of the director of the institution and transmits live the image in the exhibition space, and the sound is delayed of 24 hours. So once we had it in it, as we speak, of course, bad about artists, bad about neighbors, bad. So afterwards, the colleague said to me, "Yo, you're such an asshole, why you do that? We cannot speak anymore." And everybody was censoring itself. But I was proud to have a historic piece in it. As much, I don't show it, we don't have time, but as much we had, for example, an important piece of Harun Farouki in this show. Kurt Kavietzel, I think he was at ICP recently. We showed him, I think, 3-4 years ago. He has a huge archive of more or less 1 million of photos, and he's kind of a modern Marcel Proust. Like Marcel Proust, he never went out of his room, but he traveled through the whole world, and so he sneaks in all possible surveillance cameras and chat rooms. And when we made the show, he showed only something like 9 of these photos. And I said to him, well, if we do into the triennial, if you can do a whole wall, you see behind the office, if you can do a whole wall, we do it. Of course, he found it, and it's a kind of encyclopedia of our behavior in front of the computers, and they are all people of chat rooms. So the amazing thing that Kurt Kavietzel found is that when you put in on Google user, I mean we all, you have no image. So he found the images of the users. Clément Lambelet is a young Geneva artist, and he found all this material on internet, and it's from the US military, from all the bombings with drones in Afghanistan. And if you go now to have a look on this internet site, where officially you can't find it anymore, he took it off. Enrique Fontani has tried to give hints to the public how to escape of this permanent control, so of course by all possible masquerades. Armin Linke proposed this photo. It's an automatic working process, what will be more and more, and we will lose more and more jobs with this way of working. But the strange thing is why there is a camera in an automatic working process, you know? I mean, there is nothing more faithful than a machine. But the machine here is printing money. So in case there will be a human be tempted to steal the money, he will be recognized on the screen where you have this grid, black and white in the middle of the image. We come again to this question. I think it's a very temporary question when an image is only done with numbers, when an image is only has its base only by numbers. And Heather Dewey Hagberg, she goes even much further in this little box. And she made an analysis genetic analysis of the person who smoked. And with that, she got an image, an eventual image of the face of the person. And then she pushed the button, and with the 3D printer, she got these masks. So what is a photo today, no? So it's very floating, these questions. I saw on Magdalena, they had the book of Christoph Nüssli and Christoph Oeschke. It was one of the most beautiful books, very much prized, and they're very young. It was really surprising. Very young people, I don't know, 25 years, and they get interested in a photographer tied to the left wing, photographing demonstrations in Zurich, etc. And they found that there have been 3,000 files on this man. And this is something that is not so well known because everybody thinks that Switzerland is a paradise. It's sure a paradise for people who have money, but for common people during the Cold War, it was a kind of German Democratic Republic on the western side. But this, of course, there was an anti-communism extremely. But once the fall down, or as Jean Baudrillard said, une fois la glace brisée, la merde monte à la surface. Once the ice broken, the shit comes on the surface, and this is what happened in 91. The wall was down, and Switzerland was not anymore interesting for the US. So all of a sudden, as citizens, we discovered that on 6 million inhabitants, 1 million was observed during 10 years, 20 years. There have been filed on 1 million of citizens. And one of these citizens was this photographer that you see on the left side. And in the back is a piece of Jules Spinach. For me, it was very important to have this panorama, because I spoke before about Foucault and the panopticon, and that the metaphor of the panopticon, probably with internet and all the digital medias, is not anymore probably a metaphor that works to speak about how we are controlled by the state. And he made in a prison in Germany that is built not really on the panopticon that is round, but a prison that is like a star, and in the middle you have only one waiter who can observe everybody. But you can see that there are also screens, so you have both worlds of surveillance. And if we would go on the screen of this computer, and on the computer we probably would have more information about the prisoners than everybody would have, no? As interesting as I said, he was invited. This is a work where he was invited by Urs Stahel, the founder of the Photo Museum Winterthur, who made the triennial in Mannheim, and Jules Spinach was invited for every section to do a big panorama. And so we showed this one. This was also in Mannheim. And then you have these two screens that have been done also with this automatic camera, that the software that Jules Spinach developed. And this is in a big software company, probably the biggest software company out of the States, at least in Europe. And the interesting thing is that you have both built on the panopticon map. So on the top you have the prison, and the three stars around are this gigantic software company. It's called SAP. I try to go a bit quickly. Victoria Binchuk, so she reinversed the thing. She goes on Google Street. She found scenes that looks, it's a pity we have a better definition. On the right side, you have the photo that she found on Google, and she printed in black and white, and like here, it remains a photo of Volker Evans, so she's doing relations to the history of photo with these Google Street photos, and then she goes on the site by itself and photograph what she sees and how she sees, and of course with a complete other definition. And then these are these black and white, these color photos. Gary Hill, we could present his last work, and I mean he's so much known as a lens-based worker, and you have lenses here, but they are much more sculpture. So if you look in these holes, you see yourself. You see parts of your body, and of course it's a joke about this selfie culture that is overwhelming us today. Christopher also spoke about all these software programs who are generating themselves images, and where you even don't have to have a lens for to get images. And this is a piece done by Jonas Stahl. It's called Close Architecture. He discovered that this Fleur Agema, a student, she was studying architecture when he was studying at the Beaux-Arts, at the Fine Arts in Utrecht, that this woman became a very important heavy right-wing politician of the Party of Freedom in Holland. And then he remembered of a work she's done as a student that was the ideal prison. And this ideal prison is what we have here. So he built that from her sketches, and you have it on the right side. It's a kind of prison where you go forward when you behave well. You have a nicer room, you go more out, and then you have a regression, so you are pushed back, and so no surprise that this woman is now in the Party of Freedom. Rubens Mano on the left, a video projection. Very nice. He observed that, I don't remember if it's in Ecuador, in Colombia, a video camera that became completely mad and turns on itself. So as a metaphor of something that turns on itself, it's quite interesting. There is still the hope that these machines one day finish by turning on themselves. Rafael Lonzano Hemmer, who is a pioneer in the world of high-tech art, made in '92 this eye that when you move, the eye follows you. An artist that I recently discovered, and he is unfortunately not as well known, but he made very important pieces in the end of '60s. In the spirit of the 60s, where kind of ontology was reached out or searched about media, about behaviors, and I liked this idea that this camera is filming the plug, because maybe in '68 it was not so evident, but today we know we are so depending on electricity. And all these new images, they will exist only as long as we have electricity. Jemina Steli, she invited in 1999 male collectors, curators, galleries, museums director, who helped her in her career. And as a kind of poisoned candy, she offered them to come in the studio and to do a strip specially for them. And all the men went in the trap. And they had to photograph themselves with a self-déclencheur. And well, you don't see it as good as that, but only the physical positions of the men are speaking quite for themselves. Thank you very much.
O Joerg falou da dificuldade de fotografar e da dificuldade colocada pelo Estado em se permitir fotografar, enquanto que ele se permite nos fotografar onde quer que esteja. Eu vou mostrar algumas coisas que eu fiz numa invasão americana no Panamá e na Guerra do Golfo. Em 1989, houve uma eleição no Panamá, onde ganhou um cara chamado Endara Galimandi. Bom, o cara que mandava no país chamava Manuel Noriega. Ele não gostou do resultado e anulou a eleição. O Noriega era um aliado dos Estados Unidos, tinha sido um aliado dos Estados Unidos via Richard Nixon e tinha se metido com o tráfico de drogas. Aí, o Noriega mandou matar um americano, um marineiro americano, que estava em roupa civil. E os Estados Unidos resolveu invadir o Panamá. O que eu aperto aqui? Da direita? Eu fui para lá, chegamos no aeroporto e não pudemos trabalhar, porque os militares falaram que não nos davam seguranças. Só uma coisa, os Estados Unidos perdeu a guerra do Vietnã porque os fotógrafos, os jornalistas, principalmente os fotógrafos, mandavam para os Estados Unidos as fotos do que eles chamam de body bag, que eram os mortos dentro dos seus sacos plásticos. Aquilo virou opinião pública que estava a favor deles, que estava numa guerra fria contra a União Soviética, e estavam a favor dos Estados Unidos. Quando começaram a chegar os corpos de americanos, eles ficaram contra os Estados Unidos, e os Estados Unidos perdeu a guerra do Vietnã, teve que abandonar o Vietnã. Bom, no Panamá, tempos depois, 1979, já houve um controle da imprensa. Então, o que acontece aqui? Um oficial americano está dizendo para os jornalistas, os primeiros que chegamos, que eram 300 no Airbus, que eles não tinham condição de nos dar segurança. E nós ficamos 2 dias presos nesse lugar aí, dormindo no chão, essas coisas todas. O argumento deles foi tão suficiente que 150 desses jornalistas voltaram para os Estados Unidos, e 150 ficaram por lá. Aí nós ficamos e, enfim, registramos o que havia de lá, né? Ou seja, tem imagens muito irônicas da guerra, né? Além da morte, tem muita ironia em relação à guerra, né? Para na terra os homens de boa vontade, com esse monte de euforia bélica em frente. O centro do Panamá, o centro da cidade de Panamá, com uma bandeira branca. Os carros americanos, os Humvees, ocupando a cidade. Isso foi quando o Colin Powell, que era chefe, o Joint Chief of Staff, anunciou que iam invadir. A TV informava que qualquer informação sobre americanos tinham que ligar. De novo, as ironias, especialidades em mariscos, né, e oficiais. O Noriega acabou se refugiando na Embaixada do Vaticano. Aí está chegando um enviado do Vaticano para negociar com os americanos. Essa é a casa do Noriega, que foi invadida pelos americanos, tomada pelos americanos. Essa foto é a foto original que eu mandei, com legenda mesmo. Eu trabalhava para a Reuters e para a Agência Estado na época. Isso são cenas da invasão. Depois da invasão, aconteceram saques. Então, os americanos mandaram mais 3.000 soldados para controlar os saques. Tem essas imagens que mostram um pouco o que é a guerra, né? Parece que são ajeitadas pelo fotógrafo que botou essa cabeça de palhaço ali atrás do Mariner. A população civil se armou para evitar os saques. E, evidentemente, aconteceram excessos. A realidade, ela te fornece muitas leituras, né? Você tem igreja, você tem as Forças Armadas Panamenhas com uma cruz e um soldado americano. Os americanos, assim que chegaram no dia seguinte, eles reentronaram, reempossaram o Endara Galimandes, que era o presidente deposto pelo Noriega, que estava atrás dessa porta aí, na direção do cerimonial do Estado e protocolo. Eles fizeram o que eles chamam de mopping-up, que é uma varredura na cidade para procurar os snipers, os franco-atiradores. Essa era uma favela que existia no Panamá, invadida pelos americanos. A favela chamava Saquen las Manos de Panamá, barraca número 1. Muitos mortos aconteceram ali, tem muitos mortos lá, tanto de um lado, menos americanos, 23 americanos e 300 soldados panamenhos, mas há polêmica nesse número. Bem, outra guerra que foi bastante policiada, a imprensa foi bastante policiada, foi a Guerra do Golfo. Ela trouxe um controle mais rígido ainda, né? Isso são fotos dentro do Iraque, no caminho de Basra. Isso são iraquianos presos no Kuwait. O que aconteceu lá? Em 1991, o Iraque invadiu o Kuwait por causa de petróleo, como sempre aconteceu e continua acontecendo. Invadiu o Kuwait porque tinha uma dívida de petróleo e queria o petróleo do Kuwait. Ficou lá um tempo. Aí, como o Kuwait e Iraque fazem fronteira com a Arábia Saudita, que é um dos maiores fornecedores de petróleo do mundo, e aliado dos Estados Unidos, a OTAN, a OTAN, começou a se mobilizar e a ONU começou a pressionar o Saddam Hussein para abandonar o Iraque, abandonar o Kuwait. Isso aconteceu depois de uns 8 meses. Os americanos, esse é um avião de combustível e em primeiro plano você tem um míssil antimíssil chamado Patriot. Scud era um míssil que os iraquianos lançavam contra Riad. Nós, jornalistas, éramos obrigados a ficar em Riad assistindo a entrevistas coletivas que aconteciam de manhã e de tarde no hotel, onde os comandantes das forças aliadas faziam relatórios do que estava acontecendo. E não nos era permitido fotografar nada além daquilo que a gente estava vendo ali. Então, a gente tinha informação em segundo plano, né? Ou seja, não tinha uma informação confiável, né? Esses iraquianos presos, que eu acabei dando maço de cigarro para eles, estão disputando maço de cigarro na cidade do Kuwait. Isso é dentro do Iraque, um pouco. Eu acabei sendo preso lá junto com o William Vac, que era meu companheiro da agência Estado, preso dentro do Iraque. E essas fotos eu acabei transmitindo depois, quando cheguei na Jordânia, solto já. Isso é a fronteira do Kuwait com o Iraque. E o que se podia fazer era entrar num que eles chamavam de pool, para fotografar escudos abatidos, né? Então era como se fosse tours de turismo, né? Esses eram as coletivas que a gente assistia. Era um militar mostrando onde é que estavam os campos de petróleo do Kuwait. Esse era o general que cuidava de tudo, que era o Norman Schwarzkopf. Era o que a gente podia fazer lá. Aí nós chegamos, alugamos um carro e fomos para o norte em direção ao Kuwait, onde estava a tal da guerra. Nós chegamos, realmente vimos que o que se dizia, o que nos era dito que era uma guerra cirúrgica, né, com pouquíssimos mortos, né, a gente acabou vendo que era uma guerra mesmo, né, mas só depois que a gente acabou saindo lá de Riad, alugando um carro e indo para o norte. Então, lá a gente viu os tais body bags, só que de outro lado, né? Tinha muitos mortos. Era uma guerra muito pouco cirúrgica. Esse lugar é uma estrada que liga o Kuwait ao Iraque, ao sul do Iraque. Ficou conhecida como a Milha da Morte, The Dead Mile, porque foi quando começou a invasão aliada para tirar o Saddam Hussein e seus soldados do Kuwait. Eles foram bombardeados todos. Essas fotos não são bonitas, evidentemente, nem essas, mas eram importantes. Eu trabalhava no Estadão na época, eram importantes porque mostrava que era uma guerra como outra qualquer. Essa foto o Estadão publicou na primeira página, coisa que não fazia, mas era uma primeira foto de morte que se mostrava na época, quando se dizia que a guerra era uma guerra bastante clean, bastante cirúrgica. E, na verdade, não era uma guerra como outra qualquer. Ali tem um monumento ao Saddam, lá no fundo, chegando no sul do Iraque, isso. E aí, por falar em selfie, isso é um autorretrato, né? Não chega a ser selfie, não se chamava selfie. Entendeu? Mas como eu fiz um livro com a Esquadrilha da Fumaça, e falei, eu não posso não me fotografar nessa situação, eu tenho que mostrar para o meu filho, para os meus netos. Entendeu? Então eu fiz esse autorretrato. Assim como eu fiz esse também, que eu achei muito interessante, que como fazia muito calor dentro do Tucano, que é um avião de combate brasileiro, a gente colocava os mapas grudados na capota para diminuir o calor de dentro. Então, são selfies interessantes. Tem outro selfie que eu vou mostrar aqui daqui a pouco, mas, enfim, dificuldades de fotografar existiram, continuam existindo. Esse rapaz, ele estava fotografando 3 anos atrás, no dia 13 de junho, numa manifestação que teve aqui, e teve um confronto com a polícia, e a polícia usou bala de borracha, só que, em vez de usar o manual e olhar o manual, que não se pode dar tiro acima da cintura, acertou o olho do cara e ele perdeu um olho, né? Então, eu fiz esse selfie hoje aqui. Esse é um selfie realmente intencional, né? Que é uma campanha, ou seja, culpado por fotografar, cúmplice do Sérgio Andrade da Silva, que é fotógrafo profissional, que no dia 13 de junho de 2013, enquanto cobriu um protesto contra o aumento das passagens de ônibus na cidade de São Paulo, foi atingido por um disparo de bala de borracha e perdeu o olho esquerdo. Ele acabou de perder um processo na justiça, porque diz que a culpa era dele, que estava ali no meio da confusão. Bom, enfim, basicamente é isso. Jogo rápido, que nós já estamos lá.
Acho que posso dar por encerrado. Agradeço a presença de todos, aos nossos palestrantes, ao nosso público. O ano que vem nos encontramos novamente. Muito obrigado à SP-Arte e à Arte Brasileiros pela realização desse evento. Boa noite.